Hi,
Oh, hello
Will.
there.
Nice to
Hi.
meet you. Thanks for chatting with me today. I heard you talking about the Feel Good podcast. So the way we define feel good, Will, is about connecting to yourself. So it's not being happy and joyful, but really being able to discern what you need in that particular moment, deeper self connection beneath the fear, the ego, the mind chatter, to living from the true self, which is really what the whole philosophy is about.
Yes, yes. So let's right. I did a brief intro of you and was mentioning, you're a New York Times multi best-selling author. How difficult people don't realize, I feel like these days, because there's your Amazon bestsellers, which I feel like everybody and anyone can claim these days. I don't know how that really works, but New York Times that's a big deal. That means a lot of people read it. It went national, if not international, right? And why don't you tell us about the books that you've written, and kind of, I guess, just sum up your main goal in life, and what the message you're trying to spread to people, and kind of let's get into a little bit about how you got here and then where you're headed moving forward.
Okay, well, that's about 50 questions in one. But this is the new book. It's called You Are More Than You Think You Are, and it looks backwards on here. This is the sixth book. So my first book came out 10 years ago, and it was really started with nutrition. It started with helping people, learn how to take care of their bodies from the food channel, which is where I started my wellness journey, because food is physical, and, we can smell it and taste it and pick it up. So in many ways, because it's so tangible, we can often learn to work with energy and work to take care of ourselves with that. But then after two books focused on food, it just became really obvious to me that I needed to expand the lifestyle and the conversation. So where I am today, our philosophy is, it's called the Four Cornerstones of True Wellness, which is food, body, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth. So on the podcast, at Solluna, which is my brand, in the books, everywhere, we cover offerings and ways to really care for yourself deeply across all of the categories. So we have food books, recipes, for food, many courses. We also have supplements for body. We have yoga programs, asana programs. Emotional well-being, we have our Solluna Circle, which is our online community program where we talk about themes every month. And then spiritual growth-wise, we put out meditations every week. We have the new book, which is really the way we define spirituality, is about deeper self-connection, more freedom, more awareness. So it's not religion. It's not anything specific to that. It's really just working with energy in a broader way. So thanks for pinning that, Well. And I always find my philosophy is really taking this wider approach, because I believe our power is in our wholeness. So if we take a really fragmented approach and we just focus on things like numbers in our lives, let's say how much we weigh, how much money's in the bank, or we just focus on food, then we don't really honor the wholeness that we are. So we tend to feel a lot of anxiety. We don't feel good enough. We feel a lot of lack still. We may be saying the right things, but underneath the energy doesn't match. It doesn't line up. So really my philosophy is nurturing ourselves in this more total holistic way, so we feel our best and we get the best results.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing that I'm screaming from the rooftops too. I feel like there's different levels of people's understandings of what makes them happy. And at the end of the day, like, if you could ask anybody what they want out of life, I mean, they may give you an answer that they think will lead to this, but really what any answer they give you is going to come down to, I just want to be happy, right? Well, I mean, what are we all here for other than to just live the best life we possibly can, right? And so I feel like a lot of people they focus on certain areas of life that they think are going to make them happy, and they go all in on that. Like you said, even if it's your physical health, which is a great thing to focus on, and you want to work on that, but you can't ignore these other areas of your life that also, add to this holistic kind of balanced, making sure that you don't have anxiety of like, wait, something's missing, something's not right in my life, and what is that? And I don't know. And so I love.
Yeah, I want to show you something, Will, that I drew yesterday, actually, that relates to what you're talking about here. This is for our Solluna Circle, actually. And this is the way I think about it, right? So here's the cornerstones that I just said: food, body, emotional well-being, spiritual growth. When we have this in place, it provides a structure. And the importance of the structure is that we don't have to overthink. right? So to me,
Right.
the point of our daily habits and the point of the lifestyle we create is that we just start to flow. We start to know what to do. Less thinking means this then starts to dissolve. It comes into the background. And then we're just left with the wholeness of the true self. And what that means is less thinking, more being, and more what the subtitle of my book is all about, which is enlightenment. Okay, so enlightenment can seem like this big scary word, but it's really about freedom. So when we talk about having more joy and happiness in life, to create that consistently, it always has to go with freedom. Freedom from our limited patterns, from the mind, from the fear that tells us we're not good enough, that's constantly comparing, that's constantly telling us to play small. So we don't really create true peace, bliss, and joy, according to the Vedic texts, unless we work towards more freedom in our lives. So then we start to, the only way we create more free from ourselves, right? So the ancient texts, the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, which I summarize in chapter 3, You Are a Warrior, is all about the great, the whole thing's an allegory. It's an amazing thing. I don't know, Will, if you read it, but it's really about this great battle, and it's battle formations, and it gets really detailed, but it's really about an allegory for the battle that we all wage every day, the battle of the mind, the battle of the ego, the battle within ourselves. Yeah. So really, happiness and freedom, like you said, we can look out here, we can create all the money and the health and the weight we want and all the stuff, but it really is about our inner state. It really is what's inside of us, and that becomes reflected outside of us. And also we can have all this stuff, but we can still feel a lot of turmoil. We don't feel the peace. So we can create the life we want, but we don't necessarily enjoy it. So really what my philosophy is about in this new book is really about how do you create freedom, or as Paramahansa Yogananda says, who's the great yoga guru, how do you scrape off the mud? Because the diamond's already inside of you. The true self is inside. So it's moving ignorance, delusion, limited ideas and beliefs, negative ideas and beliefs, and coming down to truth and expansion, and letting our unique gifts come forward, our energy. So that's a big part of it. Isn't just acquiring more stuff. We don't have to buy stuff. You know, the world of biohacking is always more stuff out here. That stuff's fun and good too. But ultimately, we want to start to get underneath the patterns and what limits us. And that comes from the inside.
Well said. And, you know, so I can't help but everything you just said. I took this Yale happiness course not too long ago. I don't know if you're familiar with it, The Science of Well-Being. And it's free. It's on Coursera. It's really great. And I'd been hearing about it for years. And it's like, I got to take this. Finally, I'm like, I'm doing it. And really, it's kind of what you and I are both preaching, and to sum up what you're just saying in the word, and they use the word miswantings as this kind of main thing that is steering us in that wrong direction and making us unhappy and not, and as you would, I guess, put it, not being free of yourself. We've gotten to the point to where, you know, society, just the way that things are structured, you know, depending on your parents, school, media, peers, you know, whatever, like we're developing habits based on what we think will make us happy, these miswantings. And we start taking action on these things, and then all of a sudden, and like you're saying, you know, depending on what area that is, somebody might become obsessed with food. Like if I can just look a certain way, then I'll be happy. And then they kind of block out everything else, and then, you know, it can lead to unhealthy habits such as, you know, bulimia, anorexia, or it can even lead to healthy ones, and getting your body in physical shape. But what's important is, like, why are you doing it? Like, at the end of the road, like, where do you want to end up when you're dead? And I think it's kind of a grim way to look at it, but I actually kind of turn it to what I call the Back to the Future list, which is, let's go to the end of your life and say, like, what is it that you really want said about you? Like, what do you want to be known for? And I feel like that really helps to clarify these miswantings we're talking about, and these things that are in our mind and we're constantly fighting and we're focusing on that are actually making us less happy, and sort of clarify, like, okay, well, if this is what I want said about me, right? And these are the things of the person I want to be, then you kind of reverse engineer it, and, you know, you basically start working on these different areas that will get you there per your program.
Sure. I mean, in a larger sense, though, I would say, let's say we want to, you know, we all want love, right? So for me, there's a big difference between happiness and joy, right? And the yogis were very specific about this idea of ever new joy, which comes from the inside, which is related to freedom, because it means that less and less we have to focus on getting external things like approval, validation, love from outside of us. We think love comes out here, all this stuff. It means we pull back our power and we realize that we can be in a state of love. We can be in a state of steady joy without anything outside of us. So again, that's where the freedom and the true joy are wrapped together. It comes from a deeper place than all the surface stuff. You know, 2 books ago, I wrote a book with Deepak Chopra, who said something to me that has stayed with me till this day, and I say it all the time. He says, if happiness is a moving target, if it's something outside of you, then you're always going to struggle. You're never going to really be sustainably happy, whether it's the weight or whether it's, you know, how popular you are or your sales numbers or whatever it is. You can have those things, but really it's the state of inner fulfillment and contentment that we're chasing. So it comes from the inside. As much as we try to fill it with relationships or shiny things on the outside, you know, and having worked with hundreds and thousands of people that, you know, have a lot of great things and are really physically beautiful, we realize it has to go beyond that. That's still the shell of who we are. The true self, we start to realize, we start to intuit, we are more than this shell. So when people are just focused on the surface of who we are, it doesn't sit right with us because we know we're more than that. And so it doesn't really feel satisfying. We start to feel that fraud complex or like it doesn't feel right because we want to be seen and we want to see other people, right? Ultimately. So seeing means we go beneath the surface. We start to work with energy instead of just this, you know, the surface. What Wayne Dyer is the less than 1% of who we are, you know, living life through this, the ego, again, peripheral nervous system, 5 senses, just what we're seeing. So to me, happiness, joy, freedom, again, we live this life, we create structures, so we live life. We start to nurture ourselves emotionally. And the book that I have is a lot of practices about how do we tune into our energy? How do we shift energy if we're starting to get into comparison mode? Starting the day with meditation, hot water with lemon, all these simple practices. So then again, we start to move past the surface and we start to move forward with the true self, with living life from a deeper place of intuition and love and connection. So to me, that's where joy comes from, and happiness and freedom, going deeper instead of just constantly living life on the surface, which
right.
is still really stressful.
Exactly right, and that's right. Kind of tying to what I was saying and connecting the two. It's these miswantings are these surfacey things that we've come to think are important, and then that's what we spend our time on versus, like you're saying, this more introspective place. And so let's talk about, so what you were just saying, it's funny, you haven't used the word habits, but it basically what you're saying to me aligns with habits, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of getting to a place, and you used the word flow at the beginning of this podcast, which I love. I feel like I've been hearing that a lot more lately. And to me, it's about kind of getting into this state of like, okay, these are the actions I need to take that will give me that feeling we're both talking about, that true joy, that true happiness, whatever you want to call it, versus that external, just, you know, instant gratification kind. And there's certain actions which then lead to habits that I think you mentioned a few, like your morning routine, something about, did you say drinking tea or something? I can't remember the examples you gave, but basically, right. So you start kind of building, almost engineering your life to say, okay, these are the things that I know if I do consistently and kind of automatically get into autopilot on will allow me to be that person that I want to be and to lead that life. I'm curious to see your take on how, do you see those as habits, or do you look at it in a different way?
No, I think habits really start to create the structure of our lives. So I say morning routine, habits, you know, it's just semantics, it's words, but basically what we want to do is create a life, back to this, where there's less thinking. And what I mean by that, so I used to read Eckhart Tolle, and I used to say, oh, I love what he's talking about, but his main thing is about being in the now, and his main thing is going beyond thought. And I didn't really understand that for a long time. I was like, what's he talking about? Don't we have to think, we're humans, you know? And then when I started to meditate, when I started to go deeper into Vedic philosophy, you realize that there is something beyond thought, and that's intuition. That's when we're moving from a different place. We have to, you know, to a degree, we're taking in information, we're gathering. Yes, there's some thinking, but we don't want to rely just like on, because what happens is the thoughts keep going, right? It's like the monkey mind that the Zen Buddhists talk about. And then we end up getting confused, and then we can go to anxiety, and then we get decision paralysis, or we go from diet to diet, or we're moving around all the time, and we don't really go deeper. We don't really nourish ourselves. So in contrast, once we take in information and then we can discern, oh, this is a really good thing for me to do, to drink hot water with lemon every morning, to take SBO probiotics every morning. Then we establish, okay, this is what my morning routine is going to look like. And then we start doing it every day. And then eventually we don't even have to think about it. It's just like, oh, I'm drinking my water, and now it's time to meditate, whatever it is.
That's exactly right. Right. That's the cool thing about it.
And then we just go into flow, and then having that more directed energy at the beginning of the day puts us in a state for the morning, in a different state. We create intentions. Part of my morning practice, meditation, definitely. If we have a couple minutes to journal, where's my journal's often right next to me. I think about my intention for the day. I like to write it down. I think about anything to let go of from the day before. I think about what I'm grateful for. It's just like in 2 or 3 minutes, it helps me clarify my energy so that I go into the day. So yeah, it's really important. I think the way we start the day, also my evening practice, how we end the day. So we're really just supporting our energy across all cornerstones. So yeah.
I mean, that's exactly, I look at it's so funny. And this proves my point every time I meet somebody like you, that like there really are universal principles out there that that have been around since the beginning of man. They're going to be around until we destroy ourselves, hopefully not. But it's sort of like, if you can understand what these are and build a system around them, to me, that's the key to life. And everything we're saying, like you're saying it in slightly different ways than I say it, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's understanding what it is that truly makes you happy at a core level, and developing routines, habits, whatever you want to call it, around. The way I break it down is you have your routines, you have your morning, your afternoon, and your night. And within each of these routines, we have, I call them clusters, which are like, so let's say I got my bathroom cluster. I wake up, and then when I go to the bathroom, I've got certain things that I do, and I've kind of looked at, okay, what are these things? And I look at opportunities to take what might have been a neutral or a failure habit and replace it with a success habit. So now, like when I take my shower, I stretch, I recite my mantra to myself, and then I say what I'm grateful for, right? It's like kind of a 3-in-1. And so I come out of the shower and I'm like, let's go, right? And like you said, I kind of, this is helping me to get into a state of flow, and it's become automatic. I don't even have to think about it anymore. Like doing those things is just the same as if I'd gotten in the shower and been thinking about all the negative things that might happen today, right? And then another habit I have when I sit down at my computer is similar to what you said, which is I call it, I've come up with an acronym called CORE, C-O-R, where I say, okay, what am I committed to today? Like what is my main agenda? What is my main goal? And this is based on whatever longer term goals I have. But I say, okay, today, what is it I'm trying to do? And then the O stands for obstacles. Like what could possibly stand in my way? Like what are things that might, prevent me from getting there, that, or, to a normal person, these are a million different things. It could be, people tend to grab and play with their phone, or they get distracted and procrastinate. And so I'm aware of the things that I personally know that are obstacles for me. And I say, okay, they're not going to get there today. When they start to creep up, I'm going to push them to the side.
Okay.
And then the R is reward, which is sort of like, okay, how great is it going to feel if I actually get there? And when I do, it feels amazing.
Okay. What's the E? Oh, it's just COR.
Just COR.
Okay.
Yeah, COR. Yeah.
E could be excellent. It's an excellent flow.
If you get there, things are excellent, right? So you could add that. But to me, it's like, so that's one of these little mini routines, habits that I developed, and like, it's so important for me to do that. And I've noticed such a huge shift in my life and my happiness, because it's sort of like, it just keeps me moving. It keeps me going in the direction I want. But because it's so easy, especially as living in this day and age where there's a million things coming at us, and there's more and more devices and people and companies trying to get our attention. And if we're not aware of it, and we don't have a proactive routine to avoid that, then it's going to control us, and we're not going to be able to control our own lives, right?
That's right. And so, like, going back to this one more time, food and body
Please.
are very physical, right? It's like how we exercise, how we sleep, what we're putting into our bodies. These are the more obvious parts of self-care. But the formless parts of us, so emotional well-being, mental health, meditation, spiritual, right? Sometimes we ignore that and we think, oh, I'm just going to put my effort into creating this body that I want, or wellness is like what I weigh and all these devices, like you said, all
Right.
this trackable stuff. That's great. But again, all our energy is flowing out externally. And so that's where we get really confused, because we have to see what's the best thing for us and what our inner state is and where our mental health is. That's why we need to take part of that attention through our routines and direct it inward. So for me, journaling, meditation are just as important, actually for me, more than, to be fully honest, than the food part and the other part, because it's where I connect to my intuition. It's where I feel settled. It's where my mind doesn't trick me so much. Because if we don't meditate, we start to believe all our thoughts. So we make more mistakes during the day, right? So when I meditate and then I journal, I'm less reactive. I'm more aware of when I'm really hungry and what foods will really serve me. So it's helped me to overcome food cravings. There's a practical nature. I sense my energy, right? I'm more extroverted this morning. I'm going to shoot more content and work on this course, or I'm actually feeling more introverted right now. I'm going to write this article. I'm going to do research. So we become stewards of our energy, and that allows us to be more joyful, to be more happy, what we were talking about, to feel more freedom and to feel more self-connection. That's what really feeling good is about. We feel who we are. Disconnected is fragmentation. Disconnection is confusion and obsession and not feeling good enough and fear. Truly connected to who we are, now we have this sense of stability and this deeper sense of confidence as we flow through life, and that's what's possible. That's what the new book is about. Will, thank you so much for supporting me today and having this conversation. It was so great to chat with you and to connect for the first time, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you on here. Best of luck to you, and obviously you're on the right path. You're building that momentum in all these crucial areas. So keep spreading your message. Thanks for what you do.
And thank you so much for spreading your message with all the habits and ways to help people feel happier, more fulfilled in life.
For sure. Okay.
For energy. Namaste. Thank you so much.
Namaste. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
That's it for the 5 Core Life. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button on this video and pound that subscribe button so you get notified when new episodes drop. Also, please fill out the free 5 Core Life Evaluator quiz. It's a great way to get a baseline of where you are in the 5 cores and which of the 5 cores you need support. In addition, you'll get some actionable advice that you can apply and start improving your life in the areas that you need it most. That's it for today's episode of the 5 Core Life Podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Get moving. Gain momentum. Join the movement. Join Emmett by going to moremomentum.com to take a free life evaluator quiz on where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores.